It always seems to be the case. I've gotten it down to the point where it doesn't flummox me too often anymore. But still,
It works, but whatever you click on, I think, oh my gosh, what have I done?
works when it works, and then when it doesn't work, it's a
It's
humble.
impossible.
There we go. Okay, we're we're live on YouTube.
Pull it down.
Okay, find my headphones.
I need to go get something anyway.
Okay. Oh, now Julian snuck away.
Had to go get something.
Yeah. You had indicated that you were maybe interested in taking one of these meetings a while back, but then I haven't heard from you. You think we
Oh,
want to do that at some point, or
I'd like to, and I'm trying to figure out a better way. I need to tape some of it.
hmm,
Problem with it is I've got in my room here, I've got a lot of my valuable stuff here. I have some cameras out in my garage. I have my other cameras over at my museum warehouse. It's in like several areas, and
hmm.
you can do it on your cell phone, but I've got to learn how to do that first.
Yeah, or just take some pictures or some video. Well, whatever. I mean, if you want to, that's great. And if it's a pain in the butt, then don't worry
It's
about
not
it.
a pain in the butt. I'm just trying to figure out that, to make it worthwhile that I show something like stuff like this.
Okay.
Julian, you just froze up. I don't know what happened.
That's his teleportation tube.
Aha, maybe that's it. I have a question for Julian actually when he comes back. Well, we're having technical difficulties. Talk amongst yourselves. Have a good time, folks. And like dead air on the radio or something. But
I
I
think
really did want to ask Julian something. So,
I think we're allowed to have dead air here sometimes.
well, probably so.
Quite as egregious.
Incidentally, hi, Dave.
Hello.
Um, I guess he's dialing back in because he seems to have disappeared from my screen. So,
Works except when it doesn't.
yeah, and we expect it to work. That's the scary thing.
Hey, you go back as far as most of us with this stuff. I remember when we were trying to do telephone calls over the internet, and it just, it was just too hard.
It
Couldn't make
didn't
it
work.
happen.
It still
Yeah.
doesn't work sometimes.
You're absolutely right.
Well, we had a great time. I own a couple radio stations. We run Kilgore High School football, and they're doing great. They're undefeated this season, so they're in the playoffs. And the guys that do this went down to I don't know, some weird town in East Texas near Houston, and it all comes back to us by way of Verizon. Well, there was no Verizon service at the football stadium. It's like, oh shit.
Ouch.
It's
Am
like,
I back on now?
yeah, you're back.
Oh man, my thing just went out, just disappeared and came back finally. Now I was showing this Vidicon.
That's a really big Vidicon, Julian.
Yeah, it's a,
It's a larger than thing. It's a real unusual one. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6 diodes in it. What it says on it, it's a 2-inch return beam Vidicon, a 3 RBV, something that they photographed the Earth with. They sent a satellite up. And this satellite was launched July 23rd, 1972 on ERTS-1. System built for NASA by RCA Astro Electronics Division. And on the face of it, it's just got some unusual features to it.
Well, I've never seen one like that.
And it has a plaque on it, R. Lindley, Lindley. Apparently, he was one of the engineers that developed this, I guess. It's a nice presentation piece or something. And just something unusual. A friend of mine had it, and I said, I want that. And he finally sold me all of his his image orthicons, iconoscopes, and Vidicons. And he says, and I have that special tube you want to. And I thought, oh, goody. But anyway, for what it's worth, I thought it's kind of neat.
You know, the search for it is part of the fun of the whole thing. I got a question for you, Julian. You are one of the few people who owns a Dumont Electronicam.
Yes.
Belong to the Texas Podcast Museum. Do you have any idea how many of those were made? I get that question.
3 of those. Actually, if I had known that Williams was going to sell them, I could have had all 3 of them.
I think there are more than 3, because as far as I can tell, that Gleason used 3, and they had 35 millimeter cameras.
Yeah, those were 35. These are 6. Mine was, and you have one as well.
Yeah, ours is 16 millimeter.
Yes, that's what mine is, and it's mine's serial number 1.
Okay, well, we have one. Ours has B2 on it.
Yeah, okay, then you got number 2. I think Williams saved maybe the 3rd one. I'm not sure on that. Well, no, wait a minute. Excuse me. No, you have one, and Chuck Ferris has one.
Well, no, we have Chuck Ferris's. That's where we got it.
Okay, that answers that one. Yeah. But what I did get, he gave me all of the documentation for these electronic cams. I've got like a small book folder, and I've got interoffice memos. I've got everything, pictures of what they were using these things for. And I thought I'd like to publish this thing some way if I can figure out, to get it, to do it right. But I've got all these notes and memos and everything for a Dumont Electronicam. And I found a guy in New York City that had a binder. It was a handout piece, like to prospective advertisers or whatever for the Dumont network up in New York City. And I've never seen one before, but this guy had the whole thing. It's a very thick one. It's got a lot of pages to it, and it's telling all about their studio and everything. And I can't remember if it says anything in it, and I don't think it does, but it's something from around 1960. And
we've got some literature that we got from Chuck Ferris, and apparently they tried to sell them to the film industry as a live assist thing, so that you wouldn't have to do dailies. They would go process the film they shot and then go look at it the next day and see if it came out worth watching. So with this, you could see it right then live in real time and living black and white, which is a pretty good idea. And in fact, they did that later. I think Jerry Lewis claims credit for it, but I think Dumont was doing it earlier. In fact, some of the Dumont literature we have says that they would hope you would use color reversal film in the thing, because you could make black and white prints off of that right now. And then later you could make color versions of the same show and re-release them. I thought that was kind of forward thinking.
Something else that I got from Ferris was I got a TK41 that's from Como Television in Seattle. I'm sure
that's a beautiful camera.
Oh, it's absolutely, and it has the original RCA factory installed Como letters, in color. Mm-hmm. It's inflated letters on plexiglass like. But the interesting thing about it is I've always been in the right place at the right time. My dad was transferred to Seattle, Washington in 1960, and I watched them build the World's Fair up there. We lived on Queen Anne Hill up there on Prospect Street. And Queen Anne Hill is a whole mountain, except there's a whole city on top of it. And from my window, we had a view of Puget Sound, Mount Rainier, and I could see the World's Fair, and I watched them build the Space Needle up there. But anyway, the three networks were up there on Queen Anne Hill. Had Channel 5, which was King Television, Channel 4, Como, and Cairo, Channel 7, and also Cairo Radio across the street on Queen Anne Avenue, and sort of a little downtown area up there. Well, anyway, I was, let's see, 1960, I was just turned like 10 years old, just about 10, 11, 12, but I could walk down to the World's Fair site, and the guy at the gate there would let me in. He'd just wave me in, go on, go on. So I did the World's Fair almost on a daily basis. But Channel 4, Como, and Channel 5, King Television, they had little booths down there that you could see yourself on color TV on a round tube color set. And back then, that was a big deal. But I used to walk to school up there, and I could walk by any one of the three networks that I wanted to. And I was friends with the guys there at King Television and especially Como. Mike McKenna was the chief engineer up there at Como at that time. And there was another guy there, I can't recall his name there, but he owned a small telephone company up there somewhere. But anyway, I used to watch the camera and I thought, boy, wouldn't that be neat if I could have one of those cameras, you know, it just thrilled me. And they had a TM10 monitor up there, the Channel 4 studio, and they'd let me play with it. And, you know, it's that 15-inch, you know, like a CT100 sort of. And they'd let me play with it and, you know, do things with it. And they'd let me check voltages. And they taught me a lot. And that's where I got a large interest in, you know, seeing the TK1, the monoscope camera. I see there's, you know, for the Indian head pattern. And took me 25 years to find a TK1, but I found one. And I've got one of those, and I want to do it just like they do up there in Woonsocket up there. Was it WBT up there? Yeah, WBT Woonsocket Broadcast Transmitter.
Right. Museum of Broadcast Technology, WMBT.org, I think.
Yeah. I can't remember.
There's one at DTF. You can turn the timer on and it comes on, it works.
Oh, really?
Cool. Yeah, and we've got one too. Ours, we actually have the original artwork. It's on loan to us. We don't own it, but a guy named Will Heineman, who's one of Chuck Ferris's friends, owns it. He bought it from Chuck Ferris, and it's on display in our museum. So it's pretty cool.
I like the one up there, Woonsocket up there. They have it on a roll around cart, sort of.
That's a good idea.
And it works.
Mm-hmm.
And
ours does too.
That's what I want to do. Now, I found it in an accidental way. I was at a ham fest up in Indianapolis, and I was telling a guy that, you know, I look for things and what I do with early television and all that. This one guy just walks over and says, I think I have something that you'll want. And, you know, he had a monoscope camera, he said, and then he said he had a monitor and stuff. And I said, is this a TV set or is it an actual monitor? Oh, no, it's stuff. It came from Channel 9 where he retired from. He lived about 2 miles away from the fairgrounds up there, and I couldn't wait till about 1 o'clock there when he said he was going to be there. And we hightailed over to his house to see what he had. And darn if he didn't have a TK1. He had the 21-inch, what is it, TM21. He had that. And gosh, he had a bunch of other stuff that I got. And he says, I just want to get this stuff out of my garage. And he gave it to me. And I said, I got to pay you something for it. But anyway, I gave him $100 and he reluctantly took it. But anyway, I got a TK1 and I've got about 4 or 5 WP16s, W16 RCA power supplies. I think I'm going to need one of those. And if I can get one of those working properly. But I want to.
Julian,
yes.
Julian, sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
It's fascinating stories, but it's sort of time to get going. You certainly have a bunch of great stuff. I don't have to be sorry. It was enjoyable to listen to. Pardon my hoarse voice. I've had I don't know what the last couple of days. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
perfectly.
You look
Good,
like you're in
good.
Colorado.
Glad to hear. Good to hear. Well, welcome everybody to the November meeting of the Early Television Museum community. Let's first of all start by thanking the New Jersey Antique Radio Club for sponsoring the meeting and providing our Zoom feed. As usual, turn it over to Dave to give our brief courtesy announcement.
Yep, we've been doing pretty good. Just please remember to keep your microphones off. That's my abbreviated courtesy message. That's all I got. Back to you, Steve.
And that's about all you need to say. That seems to be the only distraction we've had, and we haven't had that recently, I've noticed. Is there anybody who has not been on this meeting before that would like to introduce themselves? I guess that we're all old timers then. That's good to hear that we have a lot of repeat people coming back. Give a brief report on the museum. I just got back. I've been back in Colorado a couple of weeks. I was there for a couple of months and really got quite a bit done. I think probably most of you know we got the shelves built in the warehouse. Featured those at the last meeting for the swap meet. And I had a week left, and I was feeling pretty good. So I got a start on our new display area between the European room and the European post-war room and the CRT rebuilding plant. And what we're doing there, for those who haven't heard this before, is we're doing this in a two-stage process. The first thing is we're building it backwards. We're doing the ceiling first. And then on top of the ceiling, the 2x6 joists up there, rafters up there, we're gonna have plywood, and it'll be a nice storage area, and we'll be able to put a bunch more CRTs up there. And I got a good part of the framing done for that. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, but as soon as I get back next spring, I'll finish that up, and then we'll have a contractor build a building underneath it, build a room underneath it. But fairly soon we'll be able to get a bunch of that junk that's in that area up top and out of the way. The real big news that I wanted to mention, some of you know this, but Larry's getting married mid-December, and congratulations to him. Lovely woman that he's marrying. I've been out to lunch with my wife, and I've been out to lunch with him a couple of times, and he's a lucky fellow. I'm not quite sure how he hooked her. I do know very well. The things she said about you made it very clear why she likes you. But congratulations, Larry, and it's great to see you finding a partner.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. The next thing I want to mention is we'll start soliciting for 2024 museum memberships right after Thanksgiving, and push it through the month of December. And that'll coincide with a last minute push for people that want to make donations for the tax year. So we'll be doing that through a bunch of mailings. I mean, not real mailings, but email mailings, notices and so forth. We have had an offer of donation of a huge number of CRTs, 175, I think, altogether. And I'm mulling it over to see whether we should take I think we may be able to pick and choose. I'm not sure. It's from Moyer Electronics, and they need the room. They gave us a bunch before. They gave us about 50 once before. And the tubes are desirable tubes, especially the black and white ones. We sell way more black and white tubes than you do color tubes. So especially the black and white ones would be nice to have, because we're still selling quite a few tubes, and our stock is getting thinner every day. So trying to figure out how to do that, where we'd put them. Might have to get a bigger storage locker. Then we'd have to arrange for getting them down here. So working on that. The final thing I have about the museum, I'm going to turn over to Blake. Blake is going to be telling us about our Philco future.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone. So one of the things we talked about at the board member meetings, and then what kind of helped spur this area for the back area to kind of expand our European section and kind of build out, was we wanted to have an exhibition area. And we initially weren't sure where we were going to have it, where we were going to stage it. And we all kind of settled on that it would be neat and it would be interesting to maybe have it at the front of the museum. So it would be something new that members that have came in the past and seen would get a thrill out of. And then people that were completely unfamiliar with the museum as well would also kind of get a neat, interesting spotlight showcase of the sets that we had on display. The full intention, before I talk about what I'm putting on loan, is that through time periods. So I think I'm gonna be putting on a little bit of my collection on loan there for about a year, maybe a little bit longer. And the hope is that by me doing that, we'll get other collectors that have specialized collections and that want to maybe bring some stuff out and show it off and kind of bring some attention to the history that they're passionate about. So with that being said, most people that know me know I'm the Predicta guy, or one of the Predicta guys. And my collection really is finely tuned on the 1959 model year. But after that beautiful auction piece that I got from Julian Burke this last convention, and then also from other models that I've gotten over the summer and the fall, I've kind of expanded my breadth to the 1960 model year. For non-Predicta nerds, Predicta was offered officially in two model years, 1959 and 1960. And then after 1960, they had a ton of overstock, so they kind of sold them through the early 60s as well. But at any rate, I digress. Point of this is that I'm going to be putting a large portion of my collection on loan as the first exhibition. So the first exhibition of the museum for we're all intentions, and it's all shaping up to be opened fully the weekend of the convention in May. We'll have a nice little cross selection of Predicta on display. Next month, I think Steve and I were speaking. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I intend to maybe have the next week's discussion be on the two models that I brought there over the fall swap meet. That one of them's a 1959 model set, another one's a 1960, and just get some conversation going about the Predicta. With that being said, the other point that I wanted to make was that the museum has successfully acquired a really, really, really for lack of a better words, just it's such a clean example that it should be a model for Philco's brochure of Predicta models. We acquired a 1959 Predicta pedestal barber pole model in blonde, and this year our raffle will be a fully restored Predicta barber pole pedestal in the blonde. We're going to have our board member, fellow Predicta aficionado, restorer guy, Dan Jones. He'll be doing the restoration on the set. And between that and just a tiniest bit of cosmetic cleanup, we're really going to have just a showstopper piece. Hoping to see how that does with the girls. I'm sorry, I got two golden retrievers and they're fighting. Girls! And but the plan is that by having that, we'll kind of maybe expand our reach with some of the people doing donations for the raffle. Girls, come on. I apologize. They're sisters and they fight like sisters. At any rate, so the plan is hopefully we expand our breadth of contacts. We get some different people that maybe wouldn't normally engage with the museum purchasing raffle tickets for this piece, as well as members that maybe have a Predicta but have never had one working. Dan is one of the Predicta aficionados with this restoration stuff, so you can rest assured that it's going to be a very reliable set. I tested the picture tube yesterday. It's got the more sought after 21 FDP 6.3 volt CRT. So the picture tube is going to have really great contrast and brightness, and it tests phenomenally. So we've really got quite a piece that I think collectors will really swoon over, and it'll be worthy of any of our collections here. I'm definitely going to buy tickets for it. So I would encourage all of you to do the same. And I'm not going to show it off quite yet. I got it upstairs. We're going to start chipping away at some of the work. I want to kind of leave that later unless Steve says otherwise. But for right now, I think we're going to kind of keep it behind curtain and get some work done on it and get it ready to show off fully as we get closer to the May convention. So with that, apologize for talking everyone's ear off, and thank you, Steve.
I want to add one more thing about this. You know, at the last convention, because of timing of things, we had introduced the item at the convention and then had the drawing later in the fall. And we did just about as well that way as doing it, you know, listing it early in the year and having the drawing at the convention. So Blake, we haven't talked about what the best way to do that is yet. We need to and see what we're going to do.
And to your point, that we definitely will discuss that at the board meeting, and that may very well be the course of action that we take. But I know that in December, when I go see Dan Jones, I'm going to be bringing him the chassis, and he'll probably get cracking on it fairly shortly thereafter. And I have one of the local furniture restoration people. They're going to just do light touch-ups on the trim just so we can really have a piece that'll photo well. And again, it'll be the envy of any other collectors, because there's, as anyone will tell you, I'm sure pretty much probably every mainstay collector on this page probably has 1 or 5 Predicta, but they're always in varying states and they're not in the greatest condition. So to have one just really be quite a marquee example is in and of itself hard to find, but then to have it also be restored and reliable, I think it's going to be quite the item, and I think we'll do very well with it. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you, Blake. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Well, Steve, I wanted to add a comment about the display that we have here at the museum. So with Blake's Predicta on display, and then with the QR square that's on the sign, that particular set has become very popular over the last several weeks since we've got it set up. So I think if we do more things like that with the Predictas and the QR signs, I think it's going to add even more to where people are going to be really excited. They're going to tell their friends, and they're going to want to come and visit and see the Predicta setups as well as other things here in the museum.
The Predictas are very iconic, and to your point, Larry, it's interesting because a lot of people that have seen vintage TVs have never seen one of those.
Exactly. And just to see the people go into the next room, see the sign, use their barcode scanner, scan that, and then I hear the playback play up. They absolutely enjoy that. So I definitely think we're onto something good with the Predictas as well as the QR scanners as well.
Well, hopefully next week we can show the members here kind of what I have going. I hyperlinked my documentary on the history of Predicta with the QR code next to the sets, and that I figured I was interested to see what it would do, but I'm not surprised. People love that type of stuff, and everybody's got a smartphone, so it's not overly assuming, I think, to assume people will pull out their phone and watch something. It's only 5-10 minutes long.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
For those of you that haven't heard this, we've started putting QR codes on all the signs throughout the museum. And we're just starting with them linking to the page on the website. And then as we have time, we're adding sort of slideshows on individual sets. And we've probably got about 30 of the slideshows done. And we're in the process, Larry's in the process of installing the new signs. And I haven't talked to him about how popular it is, but I'm glad to hear people are using it. Any other comments on Blake's presentation? Well, then let's move on to the item we're going to feature in the museum today. I've touched on this before, but not in the detail that I'm going to go through this time. This is our whoops, I need to get back to it, unfortunately. Where are we? There, is that it? Yeah, finally. Okay, I'm got back to where I need to be. Yeah. This is the museum's functioning flying spot scanner camera. And Larry, let's start by, if you can show the big photo tube cabinet that's right behind the projector, right behind the camera. There you go. That is part of 1/4 of the photocell assembly that RCA used in 1930. There's a picture on the wall, Larry, that shows all 4 of them. Can you get in on that? There you go. Maybe sort of hard to see. There you go. Whoops, close. You can see there.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, great. Now you can see there are 4 cabinets, each one with a with 2 photo tubes in them. And it's hard to see, but right in the middle on that pedestal, you can see Felix. Can you zoom in on Felix? I don't know if you can or not, Larry. See
Right there in the
Felix's
middle.
head? Yeah,
Right
there
there in
he
the
is.
middle.
Right. So this whole entire camera system was donated to the Henry Ford Museum. And in their wisdom, they decided that they had a surplus of photoelectric cells, and rather than cabinets. So instead of keeping it all intact, they auctioned off 3, I think, of the two or three of the photocell cabinets, and we were able to get one. And then we had the problem: well, how are we going to? And our goal was to make it work, and how can we do that? So the first thing we did was built a projector. A light projector. You can see a 60-line disc mounted to a synchronous motor, because that's the system that RCA used. And we used an old 1920s or 30s slide projector as the base for it, with a modern lens in the front, because we needed a shorter focal length than came with the slide projector. And we made a little wood frame for it. And then, that's the light source, and it projects over onto the area where the subject to be televised stands, and that's that little frame there. Now, Larry, look just behind that on the wall. You'll see the original camera, original light source. It was a monster. It was an arc lamp. I think most of the flying spots cameras used arc lamps back then because they produced enough light. Ours, we just have a 500 watt bulb in. So the next problem was, what do we do for pickup? Now, if aim to the top of the photocell cabinet to show that photocell up there. There you go. Well, we had only 1 photo tube that came with it. The other one was missing. Whoops, there it goes. And it was obvious that it wasn't going to work. And we'd have to generate so much light in order to make this thing create a picture that, though we would have liked to use it, it just wasn't possible. So what we did instead, Larry, if you'll aim down into the top of that funnel there, at the back, behind that is a 931 photomultiplier tube. So that's our light pickup. Can't really see much of it, I don't think, and that feeds into a solid state preamplifier that Peter Yancer made for us that generates about 1 volt peak to peak of video. Now we have to, with this, and the thing works quite well. In order to use the thing, we had to install a curtain on the door to get into the place. You can see it right there. Reason is because the lighting is all around 60 hertz. And it creates a beautiful hum in the picture if you have light from those incandescent lights or LED lights getting in on the photo tube. So we had to have it dark. I wanted to mention one, just a sort of sad footnote on this. It's an article on our website about somebody to solve the problem of these systems requiring that the televising be done in the dark, so people could read their scripts. So news shows couldn't. They had to memorize their, and also when they did dramas occasionally, they couldn't memorize their lines. So somebody came up with a great idea. They used a tablet and wrote the script in radium on it. So it wasn't bright enough to be picked up by the photo tube, but the actor could read it. Obviously not a good idea. I don't know. I don't think it was widespread. I think it was just somebody's idea, but that was before anybody knew that radium was really dangerous. This camera, as I said, is 60 lines, and it's a synchronous system. Larry, can you go back out into the mechanical room and go down to that RCA console set at the end? This is the set that the camera works with. It is also from RCA. It also came from Henry Ford. They sold, I think Daryl Hawk got another one of these. That's the power amplifier. We have behind it a single tube amplifier to get voltage up to drive the power amplifier. And it's got a 60-line disc in it and a synchronous motor. I believe the motor is original in that. Makes quite a noise when it comes on. There you can see the photo tube. And we restored the original chassis. At one time, this had a radio receiver built in it. Go down to the knobs at the bottom, Larry, of the cabinet. You can see the two knobs and the there you go. You can see the two knobs and an opening. It had this was the time about 1930-31 when RCA was using this system. The receiver tunes in the 2 megahertz band. That's when the FCC or FRC at that time allocated that band for 100 kilohertz wide television channels. We have the receiver for it, but we haven't done anything with it. These cabinets, apparently, as we understand it, were sold to CBS for their broadcasts in New York. They sold a bunch of these sets. And I don't know if they sold camera equipment to them or not. I haven't heard that. So anyway, that's our mechanical camera. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Steve, at the last convention, it was the first time that I had seen a lot of that stuff lit up and working. And it's definitely, it's wild to me because you really don't appreciate how far TV has come until you see what they considered fidelity back in the
right
1920s. And another interesting tidbit I learned after the fact was that you guys had put that one set in the corner there on loan for Boardwalk Empire. So I thought that was really interesting as well. So.
Oh yeah, Larry, why don't you go off topic a little bit? We'd love, look at Larry, go over to the Empire State, the tall, narrow one. There it is right there. That's our Empire State. Smithsonian has one, and we have this one. The Smithsonian's is original. Ours is a mixture of various things, but it works also. And HBO approached us years ago and asked if we would be willing to loan that or rent that to them for the final episode of Boardwalk Empire. And I don't know if you remember, but they did a pretty good job of sort of making a picture that looked like what the picture would have been at the time. You know, they sent somebody out and looked at it working, and then we made arrangements with them. So that's that's our star television set, I guess.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Mike Molnar.
Hi, Mike.
I usually do the demoing. I guess Blake was one of the victims when I was demoing that stuff last time. And it's a universal comment, the things that he said about people finally stopping and looking at some of those things. And especially that if it's two friends together, one goes in and I put them on the camera and show them their friend the picture on the 60-line set. And it's recognizable, which a lot of that stuff, you know, you really couldn't recognize your friend on it. So
Right.
It's an impressive setup. And the other thing about Boardwalk Empire, the year before, they wanted a radio that would be the right vintage for the program they were doing, and they rented a Radiola Grand from me, 4-tube set on the top, and they were so concerned about authenticity that they wanted me to send them a demonstration of what the lit up tubes would look like. And the original WD-11s really don't light up enough. You have to really look to see that they're lit. So they weren't satisfied with that idea, and they computer generated lights in each vacuum tube as they put it on. And the stars, grubby little kid had his fingers all over the radio and marked it up a little bit. But they were very serious about researching what they wanted to put on the program.
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
I do, if also on the line of mechanical sets, I had a recent acquisition that I wanted to tell people about. If I could do a share screen for a minute. Is Dave there? No.
Yeah, just press the green button.
Okay, and this picture, is that coming up? Did you get it for screen 2?
Yeah,
Yep.
we
see
got
it.
it.
The Jenkins? Let's see. So anyway, this Jenkins setup came my way this summer. It was a radio collector who said it was time for it to move on from his collection, and he had it probably 25 years. And he said the only thing he wanted to know is that he wasn't giving it over to someone who was just going to spin it around and sell it, and that it would go to a place where enough people come and see it from time to time. And I do get a lot of people through here. So he insisted he would only take the price that he paid for it 25 years ago. And in keeping with that spirit of him wanting more people to see it, I'm hoping at the convention this year I could bring it and put it on display for a few days. What surprised me, it's the JK20 receiver kit, and it has the box and all the instructions. But the story that he had was the person who originally bought it didn't want to pay extra for the cabinet. So I haven't quite determined what the disc part is with that big lens. I'm thinking it's like their Model 200 or so without a cabinet. But it's really something both pieces I've never seen anyplace before. The box, I guess you guys have at the museum.
Yeah, but nothing like your box.
Okay. And I have the original instructions too. So if there's room, I'd like to bring it. And then under the spirit of him wanting it to stay on display, that someday when it's ready to pass from my hands, I'd like it to go to the museum too.
We'd love to have you bring it.
All right. Well, hopefully it all works out for May. And I'll turn the share. Can you turn the screen off, Dave? I'll stop share. I see it.
There you go.
And the other thing, if I have a topic for when you're ready to leave for open discussion.
Okay. Let's see if anybody else has any more comments about
Sure.
this, and then we'll go to open discussion.
Yeah, I had a question about the original photo cell. That's not a multiplier. Am I correct?
The original.
Yes.
No. I don't think they had them in 1930. It's just a plain photo tube.
So that would sit in the center of the reflector then.
Yes.
Whereas the multiplier is way at the back, and it looks like the reflector maybe is not doing anything.
Yes. I don't know. An interesting thing about the cabinet, I don't have any photos that I can bring up easily, but they powered that thing on batteries, the photo tube. And I think the reason is obvious, because the voltage output of that thing had to be just something they weren't used to dealing with in 1930. And it would would have been impossible to filter the the AC enough to keep hum out of the picture. So the thing is run on batteries, and we have some of the original batteries are still in that cabinet.
I did some research on those, and the output was usually in microamps. And
Yeah.
The race was to get the best chemical mixture for inside, and then the biggest reflector. And I think Pilot had University of Illinois build at the time what was the biggest reflector, I think 18 inches. So it's an 18-inch tube that seemed to top before those went out of use.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to say congrats to Larry. And I'm glad he didn't have a heart attack back at the convention where I turned all this on to demonstrate it to somebody.
No, I was good with it.
Now that photo tube that they're showing on top of your camera there, it's a large bulb-like thing. In my collection, the only thing I have a new old stock Western Electric. It's a 3A, and it's original Western Electric can. And anyway, it's that it just has 2 wires on it, that you put in, I guess, a Fonstock clip to hook it up. It has no base or any pins on the bottom of it. And anyway, it has 2 flexible wires on it with little leads on it, much like a set of headphones there. And I imagine this was early projector, or I don't know if this was around in that time in the 30s, or I'm not exactly sure what year this is, but I suspect it's from the 30s there somehow, if that helps in anything. Anybody familiar with the 3A?
I think those smaller type tubes were used in things like crossing a light beam to open a door, that kind of operation.
They were also used for the soundtrack in on movies in the projectors.
I can just make an observation. Mike, you were talking about how they were obsessing over the accuracy of the radio. I think we all know when you see radios and TVs in the movies and shows on television, they play pretty fast and loose with the ears and with crappy matting of pictures into the screens and whatnot. And they usually don't care. At Boardwalk Empire did do a pretty nice job. I had a guy call me a few years ago, and he never did say what film it was for, but he was obsessing to a pretty high degree of detail. He wanted to know, he had no idea, he was younger, I guess. He wanted to know what a TV would look like as it came on, as an old black and white TV, as the picture sort of started to expand out to fill the screen, and how it would lock into synchronization, and how it would collapse into a dot when it went off. And we went back and forth with emails and conversations. And he eventually he was so keen on getting it just right that he actually asked me to send him some video of it actually happening, so that their graphics guys could get it just right. And that he was kind of grateful that I was willing to talk to him, but I was thrilled that somebody would take that much care to try to do an accurate job on it, because you really you don't see you see some pretty inaccurate things out there. So there's at least a few people trying.
Dave, to your point, I don't know if anybody's seen the recent Spielberg movie, The Fabelmans, but there's a scene where that shows the father's television workshop of the time. And my understanding was that particular moment, it was dated in like the mid 50s, and there was clearly some late 50s and early 60s sets in the mix too. And for me, seeing predict in 1954, it's like, it's not right.
Yeah. And that's Spielberg, the King of the Hill. Yeah, doing that.
Anybody else have any other comments about the more or less related to what we've been talking about?
I wanted to mention something. You were talking about the radium scripts, which I thought that was really an interesting point. Was Dumont Vitascan, it still used flying spot scanners in the 1950s with CRTs, in the CRT era. And during the vertical blanking period, they would flash a strobe light, and then it would flash off again when the scanners were working. And that would allow the people on the set to read. Of course, if they had epilepsy, that would be a severe problem.
Yeah, I saw that some information on that Vitascan too, and they also proposed a color one where the different photo tubes would have different color filters in front of them, so you divide up into 3 signals.
Yeah, we have one of those at the Texas Broadcast Museum. It's the film chain version, but you put that up against the wall, and the CRT that's running at 39,000 volts, as I recall, is scanning your room, your black room, and the poor guy sitting on the other side of that wall gets to read this with the strobe light flashing. And we've got one of the receivers. We got it from Chuck Ferris. It has one red, one green. I'm sorry, 2 reds, 1 green, and 1 blue photo multiplier tubes, and they've just got gels from like you use on theater lighting or something. But it's pretty interesting device, and apparently it did work. So it's not that far off from what we were looking at with this RCA mechanical TV, except it was electronically scanned rather than with a NIPCOW disc. Pretty interesting stuff, though.
Thing they always point out in those systems is that the photomultiplier pickups just do the reverse geometry of light bulbs. So you place them like lighting instruments. And the thing they never mention is for the color system, it would be like having light scoops with separate red, green, and blue bulbs, which, if you're not careful, would cast color shadows on the background.
I can't imagine how that would not happen. In fact, and they use multiples of these photo multiplier boxes. I can't imagine that it really registration might be a problem. Maybe not. I don't know. I've never seen one work. I don't think we could ever get ours working. That would be a real stretch, but it is a pretty cool idea anyway. We do have one of the CRTs for the thing, but I'm kind of afraid to, and we got it from ETF, in fact. Thank you, Steve. But it's the right one, but the thing runs at 39,000 volts, and I imagine the x-rays that pour out of this thing are just incredible.
More comments, or are we ready to move on to open discussion? And if you think of something later, you can certainly, that can be part of open discussion too. So maybe why don't we just open, we'll turn it back over to Mike because he had a topic, I know.
Yeah, just recently, I happened to research the website for Thomas Electronics, the CRT manufacturer that made very special purpose tubes. And I think compared to when we might have last been researching companies that would rebuild 15Gs, it seems like they might have changed their course a little bit, where they're really promoting the fact that their business, a lot of their business now is preventing obsolescence. And I'm sure a lot of that is the big Defense Department, fancy tubes for whatever radar, sonar, whatever happens. But I think they acquired a number of companies, and one of the specialty companies that they acquired deals with sealing metal to glass. And I'm just wondering if it might be worth reapproaching them, or I don't even know if they were approached in the past about rebuilding 15Gs. And I wasn't part of the group that was researching that, but since they're not that far from me here, I wouldn't mind being the point man or just seeing if we can get something started again in that line. I don't see any of the 15G guys on the list of names tonight.
Yeah,
But maybe
they've sort of faded into the background, unfortunately.
yeah.
They rebuilt, the 12 AP4 rebuilds that we have. There are a bunch of them floating around. I think we had 10 or 15 of them done. They did.
Okay.
And that's the only contact we've had with them. And I don't think anybody ever talked to them about 15Gs.
Okay.
But I think it would be wonderful. If you'd be willing to do that, I think that would be great.
Yeah. One thing, if I was going to, make a second or third contact about convincing them to do it, I'd like to get a feel for how many people might be interested in sending tubes so that you can, I'm sure they would have to price it by, it's X number of dollars if you do 10 of them, Y number of dollars if you do 20. So to get a feel for enticing them into a project like that, Steve, could you be the point man for people making contact to see how many people might want to have something rebuilt?
Absolutely. And we can do an email blast. And we have, of course, the databases of the people that own color sets, 15-inch
Okay.
color sets.
Yeah.
So we can contact everybody we have contact information for. We'd be glad to do that.
Good. Then we'll have another discussion down the road, and I can't stay on much longer today, but I'm certainly willing to take a ride over there and make contact.
Wonderful.
I've got 2.
Yeah, I'm down for about 10, I think. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to sign off.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Chime in with anything anybody's got.
There was a guy that shows up at Cutstown, Jim up there, I think his name is. He has a photo multiplier tube that's the largest I've ever seen. That thing is probably about 10, 11 inches. That's big, bulbous, huge thing. Where would they use something like that large? I mean, it's huge, like a big 1,000-watt light bulb or something. Nobody knew what it was. If I said it's a photo multiplier tube of some description.
Do you know how old?
Say that again.
Do you know how old it is?
I would say most of those photo multiplier tubes that I'm familiar with, they seem to be from around the 1960s, late 50s, early 60s, somewhere I know they used photo multiplier tubes in not a Geiger counter, but a scintillator. Had a little crystal in front of it, and when gamma rays would hit that crystal, it would put off a flash of light. Nothing that you could ever see, only a photo multiplier. And that was my experience when I worked at Oak Ridge. But I have never seen a photo multiplier tube that was, this thing was almost 10, 11 inches in spherical shape. It's hard to describe. I wish I thought it, but he wanted so much money.
There are several current experiments on cosmic rays that use huge arrays of large photomultipliers underground. And I wonder if it could be one of those.
If he shows up again, I'd like to try and buy it, but he just wants so much money for it. And at that time, and if he brings it back, I might look into it again because it's nothing I've ever seen before. And I do like unusual tubes like that, stuff that you never see.
Yeah, do a Google search for underground cosmic ray detectors and that general area, and you may find something.
That's a good idea. That's a good lead. I'll look into that later tonight. My little photo multipliers, one of those flying spot scanners that they use for TV test, patterns and stuff. which is always fascinating. It's a good way to display a photo multiplier tube that actually works. And I used to think the CRTs they used in those instruments was in bad shape, when I was much younger. It's a kind of a dim purple phosphor, and it's not very bright at all. It's so it can, follow the trace, the dot, and then until I realized what its real purpose was.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for using that deep violet phosphor is it has the shortest persistence, and therefore the frequency compensation is simple. The VitaScan system, of course, had to use a phosphor with enough red, green, and blue, and those phosphors typically have longer persistence. So it typically takes a 2 or 3 RC section compensator to reduce the smear in the video that results.
That's a good point. Because if you put a regular CRT, a P4 phosphor in it, it would be so great that you'd probably just see a muddy looking picture, if anything.
Something I wanted to bring up and ask other members about. I was reading in one of the we have a group, Club Philco Predicta, and this isn't necessarily related to the Predicta, but I was just curious, has anybody gotten ever any knobs from the company Renovated Radio? They announced in Club Philco Predicta that they're working on reproducing the knobs that are generally missing from the Predicta, which is very exciting because a lot of them usually are missing 1 or 3. And I just didn't know. It looks like they've been doing that for quite a long time. So I didn't know if anybody here ever had any experience buying or ordering knobs from them, because it's
Well, there's 2 things about that. I did buy some very, very difficult to make and complicated knobs from them years ago, and for a TRK 12, and they came in and they actually weren't. I wasn't 100% happy with them, and they remade them for me, and they did a really, really good job. But I believe the company was sold a few years ago. Maybe somebody can check me on that. But if they're using the same processes and the same types of molds and whatever, the stuff that I got was absolutely A1 first class.
So my understanding is, in regards to that, and Dan Jones is on vacation. He's out hunting deer in the Upper Peninsula, but he actually knows the gentleman that bought the mold making process, the molds and everything from the gentleman that got out of the business. So my understanding, as far as I know, is all of that technology is just in new hands, but the person that's doing it is supposedly as devoted as the previous owner. I'm hoping when Dan's been off the grid just because he's out hunting, so he hasn't even had a cell phone, but this kind of all transpired over the last week while he's been gone. I'm hoping when he gets back active on the scene that he'll have more corroborating and exciting information to give, because I think he knows the gentleman that bought all the stuff, because Dan had made comment that the guy was working up to that, and Dan was very excited about the prospect. But it looks like it's finally starting to happen, because the guy made a Facebook profile and actually posted in Club Philco Predicta that he was actively working on that, because I know that he did have the molds for I think the side knobs for the barber pole, the holiday, the tandem, and then the power knobs and the fine tuning knobs. I can't speak to the channel knobs, but most of the time the channel knob is there. What you're usually missing is the side knobs or the power contrast knobs. So I'm fingers crossed.
Well, it ain't rocket science. I mean, it's just a question of somebody doing it that knows what they're doing. So I would hold out a lot of hope for that, which would be great, because I think every one of my predictors is missing at least one knob.
Yeah, it's a common reoccurring topic that gets brought up on the Predicta group is someone's looking for 1 or 3 knobs, and you basically, any seasoned Predicta collector knows that if you need knobs, your best option is just to go buy another junk set. So because the junky ones are in the tens and the really clean ones that are complete are few and far between. So
Yeah, and then you end up with 2 sets that need knobs. That's what I do.
Oh no, Hunter. Well, fortunately, Facebook Market with pictures helps with that. But to your point, I'm equally as guilty. I will say that I know that the other parts of that is that antennas on the Predicta, we're everybody's been honest about trying to figure out a way to get. You can use a Zenith Chromacolor antenna or something like that, and it has a similar pivoting mechanism, but only the originals have that hideaway feature on the sets that have the hideaway. So there's talk of trying to get that going, and then there's been a concerted effort in the background to try to get reproduction screens made for the Predictas, just because I think that's probably the biggest, even worse than the knobs, is everybody that has a Predicta's got a screen that's moldy and clouded. And the problem is it's just there's quite a prohibitive requirement to get the tooling required to do something like that. So, but fortunately, there's some deep pocketed collectors and there's a strong effort behind that. So I'm hoping maybe one day we'll have some really exciting news on that front, but there are things happening in the background in regards to the knobs and the screen covers. So antennas remains to be seen, but maybe one day.
What was the name of the knob company again?
Renovated Radios.
Renovated Radios.
Yeah, I believe it's out of Detroit, Michigan now, because that was where, I don't know if that was where the guy operated before, but that's the guy that bought it is out of Detroit, Michigan. And again, that would stand to reason just because Dan Jones lives in Detroit, Michigan area, and he knows the guy supposedly. So, like I said, hopefully when on the next meeting, I can make sure Dan's on here and he can speak to that more. And if anybody on here isn't already a member of Club Philco Predicta and they have any interest, please feel free to join that Facebook group. We love new people, newcomers, and I'm very sure that once he gets back next week, that once I text him about it and rattle his cage a little bit, I'm sure that he'll go in depth about what he knows, because he was excited about that a year and a half ago. But I know the guy was just overwhelmed because there was so many molds and stuff like that the guy really wanted to get everything organized and set up in his own shop to where he could get cracking back at it. And from the posts in Club Philco Predicta, it seems like that's the case. So fingers crossed.
I'm
I always
amazed.
wondered what happened to all the knobs. I mean, how come they're always missing? I mean, they always are.
Good point. I can speak to the antennas because I've had it happen recently to me. I had two of my 59 models with the hideaway antennas. They actually, when you take them, pull them out and pull them back, there's a little plastic bracket that holds them all together with a spring, and the spring has so much tension that plastic dries out. It's really plastic, and it just pops right off. And so the antennas, the reason that they're missing antennas or broken so much is because literally the plastic mechanism would fail and shoot off, and then there's really no good way. There's one of my buddies says that he has a guy that actually can fix them and do a good job. So I intend to send one of them down there to see if that's the case, because that would be a game changer just to add some longevity. But I never understood why the antennas were missing. And then two of them happened to me. I'm like, oh, I get why they're missing. They literally shoot the hell off.
Yeah, they did that when they were new. I worked at a Philco dealer when I was in high school back in the early 60s, and these things were coming in all the time. And those antennas were almost always broken just from people trying to adjust them. We used one that was a replacement part made by GC. I'm sure they're long gone. No, but it fit. It wasn't quite the same thing, but it was close, because the ones that came with them were like the Explodomatic.
Did they hide, Chuck, when you got the GC equivalent, would it push in and hide away as well, or would it just be more,
I don't remember. I don't think it pushed in and it would hide away. I think you could get it down to where it was just one piece of the telescoping thing, and that was it.
Yeah,
but they were cheap. They were a couple of bucks or something, so it solved the problem.
It's funny.
Hey,
too,
Blake.
Philco almost seemed to have quit with the hideaway feature, because on the 17-inch sets, they don't hide away. They just stand up there and they're static, and it doesn't have that plastic spring problem. So I think they probably even realized there was a design flaw, but to get it, that hideaway feature helps make the set look really svelte and sleek. So maybe one day we'll figure out something, but like I kind of alluded to earlier, all the efforts of the Predicta Brain Trust, for lack of a better word, are trying to work on remanufacturing screen covers, as that's probably the most pressing thing, even over the antennas and stuff. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Julian. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. When I got those sets that you got from me, I got 6 new old stock Predicta antennas. And I bought a whole bunch of Predicta stuff. And I even had a Philco Predicta display that when you put it together, it would be about 7 feet tall and about 7 or 8 feet wide. And I let a guy talk me out of that about 20 years ago. And same thing with the antennas. Everybody wanted them, and I kind of sold them off, and I'm sorry I did any of that now.
A good antenna, especially for a 21-inch set that's hideaway that looks solid. I don't think I'm underselling it by saying they go for at minimum several hundreds of dollars. It used to be.
Oh, no, I had 6 of them at one
when
time.
when I first got in the hobby, you could get one for $100, maybe a little bit less. But now as many people as came out and said it, I'm very sure that $200 is probably just a starting mark on what they're worth now. Same thing with knobs. For a set of 3 knobs on the side, you get $200 or $300, $100 a knob anymore. It's crazy. So many people need them.
I'm amazed that nobody, with all the reproductions that are being done, I'm surprised the Chinese haven't gotten in on this deal or made something like that. You know, there's quite a market for that, you know.
To your point, that would be we're trying to utilize some overseas manufacturing for the screen protector deal, but it's just the tooling for that type of a size is very cost prohibitive. But to your point, the knobs is like a no-brainer. I'm really excited about Renovated Radio. I hope that they come through. I think they will, just based off of everything I've seen in the background. I think it would be really great for the hobby and kind of a coup for the people that are selling the parts for big bucks, to have those, not for lack of a better word, knockoffs come into the arena and kind of make a play. Because I would buy probably 2 or 3 sets of each color. Because that's the other thing too is that you find a really clean blonde one, and you need the blonde knobs, and all you come across are junk mahogany sets. So it's the only set that had similar knobs for both colors was the Barber poles, and that was only for the bottom 3 adjustment knobs. They still had different colors for the volume contrast, and then the UHF inlay. Also, if they had UHF, the inlay would match the color. It'd either be like a light tan for blonde, or it'd be like a mahogany for the mahogany sets, like a brown reddish.
Now that outfit that made those reproduction Predicta barber poles with a color in them, who made that? What's the name of that outfit? The Repro.
So there were 2 people that made them. I might be butchering the history because I don't know quite as much about this as other members. But Telstar started in earnest, I think, in the mid 90s, 2000s, and then Telstar got out of the business. And very briefly, there was another company, CB Electronics, that made something called the Groove Tube, which they took some of Telstar's tooling and then also redesigned some of the CRT stuff, and they did it for a couple of years after. But unfortunately, both of those companies got into it right when the flat screen era was taking hold, and so it just didn't pan out. They didn't have the business or the demand quite that they needed. And Telstar, I know, even back when they were making them brand new and selling them, they were selling for big bucks, like several thousands of dollars for a custom set, maybe more. And then you also had to pay to get it freighted from their headquarters in Wisconsin to nationwide. Where you're in California, you can only imagine what that costs. Those things are insanely heavy too. A Telstar Predicta probably weighs 3 times what a normal Predicta weighs. It's crazy. It's all in the tube. It's crazy.
Just a quick note. I put in the chat a link to a site that shows some 20-inch photo multipliers for neutrino detection.
What did you find?
It's a long page on the internet that shows the one of the detectors and a sample of the photo multiplier, which of which there are hundreds surrounding a underground water tank.
Were they big, looking like the one that Jillian was describing?
Yeah, look in the chat. You can follow the link.
That would be neat. I know Sanabria switched. I've seen the pictures of his reflectors for the large photocells that were coming from Garner in University of Illinois. and he switched after a few years to using reflectors with smaller, more modern looking. They were still photoelectric cells. They weren't PMTs. And I know Baird switched to photomultiplier tubes in the mid 30s when he was in competition with EMI. So that's about when the switch off took place. But there were PMTs in R&D labs since about 1919, as far as I know.
Steve, question for you, unrelated to the current topic, but back on what we were talking about earlier. Has there been any other productions, noteworthy or otherwise, that have reached out to the museum and or loaned equipment, whether it be technical expertise or equipment? Is anything else you could think of that's noteworthy?
You know, we've had two or three other sets that have been in movies. One of them was a fairly well-known movie, but I don't remember it. We had a lot of sets that have been used in commercials. We've recently had camera equipment used in Columbus and a couple of places. The zoo had a big fundraiser, and they set up a fake studio as part of the fundraiser. So we've had a bunch of stuff. It happens, 2 or 3 times a year. But we haven't had any other big movie. The only other than Boardwalk Empire and this other film, I can't remember the name of it, are the only 2 ones that everybody would name that people would recognize. We do have, we've done what you talk about expertise. I think probably our biggest project we ever did was many years ago. We were approached by a museum in Australia that asked us if they could build, if we could build a copy of the Lucite TRK-12 that RCA made for the World's Fair. And we did. It was pretty elaborate. It has a real, we bought, I think Dave Sika provided a cabinet. I can't remember, so long ago, I can't remember. But Dave was involved in providing something. And we bought a set, used the actual chassis. We had a company in Colorado, a plastic fabricating company. Like they do a lot of their work was for University of Colorado, making models of things out of a plastic, clear plastic. And so they built the cabinet. We took the real cabinet in, and they measured everything and duplicated it pretty exactly. And then to add a little extra flair to it, there was a company that was affiliated, I guess they were located next door to the plastics company that had that was a woodworking company, and they built a wood 12AP4 and they painted it to look like a 12AP4. And at the bottom where the yoke would be located, that's where the wooden part ended. And we took a piece of round glass from a post-war tube and shoved it up in there, glued it in place, and put a little LED where the fill to simulate a heater. And then we found an LCD screen that would fit in the top of the of that wooden TRK 12AP4, and embedded it in it, so it looked more or less. The only problem was it was flat, and of course the 12AP4 is rounded on the top, so that didn't look completely accurate. But it worked. I mean, they hooked it up to a video program source, and it's on display in Melbourne, I think.
I would love to see the picture. Is that on ETF, or is it?
It's on the website. Yeah, you can see the whole process on there.
I'll have to go dig that up after this call. I'm very intrigued. That's awesome.
That was a fascinating project, and I think the one issue of course the problem that you couldn't solve with the LCD screen easily was the fact that on a mirror and lead set, they reverse the horizontal and vertical deflections, so the mirror makes them right. And so I didn't bother with that. I figured, they probably could find a computer expert that could take, video and invert it and make it work. I don't know if they ever got around to doing that.
Very interesting. I'm glad I asked the question. I'm very interested by all that stuff. I had a prop house in New York City contact me about getting some Predicta parts, and I more or less turned them away just because I don't like selling my parts anyway. But it was interesting just because prop houses overall, when it comes to what I think that maybe you've mentioned this in the past, maybe you haven't, but you almost bake the cost of what the set is worth into the rental. So if God forbid something happens, then not only do you recoup the cost of the set, but then you also would have a rider in the contract where they would pay the full value on top of that. And it would allow you to be able to replace or repair if you could. But the guy that was looking for the Predicta part, he had mentioned that they had just filmed a music video with it or something, and the musician accidentally completely shattered the plastic screen. So he was looking for a screen cover, and I told him I didn't have any, but if I did, I'd probably want $500. And he didn't scoff at the price, but he was sad that I didn't have any. So, but it's just interesting when you find out stuff that's used in pop culture, where it came from and what have you. So.
Hey, Blake, I'm sorry I had a dropout earlier. I was asking you about the Telstar, the knobs that they used. And just as I asked you a question there, had a dropout. Where did they get their knobs from? You would saw them off and just use the button and glue them on the front.
So the knob, I've only had through my hands a Telstar Holiday model. And the knobs on the front, the channel knob didn't really look anything. It looks maybe it's a 10-footer. If you're 10 feet away from it, it might pass as a Predicta channel knob, but for the aficionados, myself included, I could tell very quickly that it wasn't accurate. The power contrast knob was at least in the right spot, and it looked kind of similar, but so the channel knob didn't do anything at all. It didn't have knobs on the side. They were just the knobs on the side and the antenna were completely deleted. And then the power contrast knob, it was all just one knob, and it was shortened significantly. And when you look up close to it, it looked nothing like the other knob, and it was poorly painted. So really, I think that what they were going for more than anything else was like the screen cover, and then the back coloring of it, and then the body and the legs itself. Some interesting things about the Telstar that I saw, the one that I had. The picture tube is significant. I mean, one of the Predicta's claim to fame was that it was a wall type TV. It was the CRT was super thin, so it would just fade into the background and be like a modern day flat, or a past day flat screen, for lack of a better comparison. And with that being said, I was very intrigued because the Telstar's head was, it was easily 3.5 Predicta width CRTs stacked next to each other. It was insanely wide. It was not a small piece. And like I said too, that's where all the weight came from. The build quality though, as far as the shell and the CRT screen cover, was pretty spot on. The only thing I noticed too was that the legs, they were not as strong as the Predicta, and I'm sure it's a testament to how heavy the TV was. But I found out after the fact it's very common for the legs of the Telstars to kind of start to bow in a little bit, which is what happened with the Holiday that I had. But frankly, the Holiday Telstar that I had, I picked up for a friend. When I was traveling, I was passing through. I found one on Marketplace, and I had a friend that was looking for one, so I picked it up. I got to putz with it for 3 weeks, and then they came through 3 weeks later and picked it up and brought it to their collection. So I'd like to have a Telstar one day, but they're so heavy, and you'd have to really have a place for them. I'm saving my room for the real thing. So.
Well, something that can be done when we need knobs is they can be 3D printed.
There's been a lot of guys that I've seen, at least, and I can only speak in regards to the Predicta. So if anybody else has any other experience with other knobs, then please pipe up. But the Predicta knobs that we've seen, the problem is that they can't really get the full depth of like there's a little bit of like a grip on the edge of like the adjustment knobs, and then also with that too. There's like a melted embossing in the top of the knobs for the labels and stuff. and or even on like the power contrast knobs, there's like an embossed gold accent on the top, and the gold accent probably be easy enough, but the embossed lettering on the actual adjustment knobs, that it kind of make or breaks what they look like. And I to be honest, I'm sure as I say this, in 5 years from now, this will be played back and I'll look like an idiot because there'll be a breakthrough with 3D printing, or somebody that's really dedicated to the hobby will figure out a really nice scan of it and put my words to shame. But I have yet to see a very compelling 3D printed Predicta knob, or honestly, and again, I hope somebody please prove me wrong, but or a TV knob. I know a lot of guys have tried doing it, but you can always tell they were 3D printed. They don't look like the real thing.
Yeah, and the technology still is in its infancy, and I think that, yeah, you're right. In a few years, might be surprised.
I genuinely hope so, because I'm not one of those people that wants the market to be cornered so I can make a bunch of money. I have very little stock of extra parts, and I have no intention of selling them. So it has nothing to do with the money. I would love to see someone come out and have really mass produced, really good quality knobs, whether it's 3D printed, whether it's the person that has Renovated Radios, from what I heard from Dan, is that they actually have original molds from Philco that they have retained that make those knobs, which is why the knobs were so spot on back when they made them before. So I think that if anybody can do it, as long as it's an accurate representation and it looks within 90 to 95% of what the original looks like, I'm all for that, and I'll buy 3 of each color, each style, each size.
Well, the 3D printing has come a long way recently. We've recently got some stuff 3D printed. We've got a volunteer down in Houston that does some amazing stuff. I don't think he's into knobs, but we recently bought a 3D printed microphone, an RCA 44BX, which looks spot on. It's amazing. The only problem is it looks too new.
I'd love to. Is that something that you have access online, Chuck, for me to see a picture of? And I'm not saying, I don't doubt you in any way, shape, or form. I just love to see that so I can quell my
Not offhand. I do at the museum, but I'm at home right. Well, I'm in my radio station office. I'll see if I can find it. I found, but the thing just blew me away. I mean, even did a 1930s microphone stand to go with it, 3D printed. It looks just like the RCA stuff. Unless you know the thing really well, you would swear it's real. And it's a great display piece, considering those microphones sell for about $5,000 these days if you find one that's in decent shape.
It's interesting too, because a buddy of mine does large scale 3D printing with like props and stuff like that. And to your point, I don't know if maybe it's an issue of scale. And again, it also could just be a level of expertise and someone that actually has the proper setup to really do it. Maybe they knock it out of the park, which is part of why I'd love to see the microphone, just so I can get full realization of what's out there. But a buddy of mine makes props with that stuff, and some of the props he comes up with are very, very, very good. So to your point, I'm sure that it's more a matter of just technology and everybody catching up and it becoming more affordable and mainstream.
This is Ed Williams. I have some models of 44BX. Let me show you something here. This is a stage-worthy model of a 44BX. I had it done by a local modeler here in the Villages in Florida. There is a 3D printed object on it. It is the yoke assembly. I couldn't figure out a way to do it otherwise.
That looks really, really,
I took
really
it to I took it to a UPS a store in Orlando, and they had a 3D printer there, and they made several of these for me. I have a total of 4 of these microphones, and I put a ribbon microphone by MKX inside of it, so it is still a ribbon microphone that is bidirectional.
That looks phenomenal, Ed. That looks
That
really
look-
good.
That looks very similar to the one we got too. I mean, it really does look phenomenal, and even the metal grill looks right.
But Ed, that was not that was only the yoke that was 3D printed. The rest was conventional model making.
That's correct. Just the yoke. The rest of it was made by a modeler here in the Villages. I
That's
use these
fantastic.
microphones for the old time radio drama club that we have monthly, and I use 2 of these and 2 of the Shure 55s.
I'm really glad you shared that, Ed. It looks awesome, and it kind of quells my doubts about the technology. It really has come a long way, to Chuck's earlier point.
This mic sounds pretty good too. I get comments from various people about it because it adds a nice warmth to the sound. But it is bidirectional, so it's a little difficult to use in a live room because it does pick up from the rest of the hall. So I have to carefully EQ it to make it work properly.
Yeah, Matt, to your point, Matt Pateray just commented they're 3D printing parts for F-14s. The military has been doing it for a while, and they're doing it for NASA and all that. So you're right. I'm eating my words. It's not even 5 years from now.
They're 3D printing artificial hips now. I mean, if you got the top of the line equipment, you can do it. But I have a entry level, hobby level 3D printer, and I've managed to embarrass myself, which it's one of the things I'm very good at. It's my superpower. Telling people that you can't make credible knobs with the 3D printer. And we have some guys at the club that are always sticking around with it too. And the technology certainly has advanced, since I got my crappy little $200 printer a few years ago. And if you have a good high resolution, high end printer, you can do a pretty nice job on this stuff now. But everybody always just casually tosses out, it's easy, have somebody 3D printed. I have a friend who used to do all the 3D modeling for me back when we used to do a lot of video 3D animation. And people just have no idea how meticulous and difficult it is to do all that modeling, to do it right. I'm sure it's gotten easier over the years, especially with the scanners, but it's not something that you can on a complex part. It's a big deal, and if anybody was going to do it as a labor of love, it would take them a long time, and we'd all do that. But if you're going to do it and charge somebody, it's going to be an expensive process still.
You can even 3D print aluminum parts nowadays.
Titanium, anything, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, this is a 3D printed on a $200 printer.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, I stand corrected, and I'm happily standing corrected because I want that to be something that's accessible, makes it the hobby easier for all of us to complete our pieces, especially as more and more of these things disappear, the parts become more and more unobtainium. So thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah. On a cheap printer, you can see there's lines on the bottom, real thin lines. On the more expensive ones, I've done some things through Shapeways, and their lines their crew will actually polish them out as part of the print process. Sand like a sander. So that's one of the big problems with doing knobs on a 3D printer is the little hairline lines.
Yep. Well, one of our members of the local club here is at Princeton University, and Princeton has 3 of everything top of the line, 3D milling machines, 3D printers, and so on and so forth. And his philosophy is, just wait a couple of years. This is all going to be $99 under your Christmas tree. So we wait.
No, I actually bought one of the RCA 77DX copies. I'm actually using it in our production room at our radio station, and everybody really likes it. It gives you large cojones, if you know what I mean. It's pretty serious. Got to roll off the base on the thing, or else you can't understand it. But it is a ribbon, and it looks the part. Other than it doesn't say RCA on it, it says some weird music store in Germany. I just stumbled across it and had to buy one. Just it's the same size and everything. Yoke's different than a regular RCA, but otherwise, and it doesn't have a shock mount on it, but otherwise, it's the same exact size.
You were talking about your models of 44BX. I've got it's an advertising piece for KELA. I think they're up in Washington State. But this thing seems to be made out of, I guess, I don't know if it's ceramic or wood or made out of something there, but it's just a solid piece there. And the base, it looks like the only thing that's real on it, I think, these knurled knobs on the side of it that hold it in the yoke. But it looks like it's made out of some kind of plastic or something. But this thing's old. This is something from the 50s for somebody's desk.
That's pretty cool. I like it.
All of that. But it looks just like our same identical size to a 44BX and the base and everything, if they can see something like that. I just thought he showed a model there, and I thought, I've got something similar to that, but this is old, you know.
Yeah, well, they used to make radios that would only pick up your radio station that look a lot like that too. They would give them out as if you bought advertising on somebody's radio station, you'd get that tuned to their one station and with the station call letters on it. They weren't as nice as that, but
1957 they gave those away, and they had a little mic flag on top that put their call letters on it as well. But you could pull one of the covers off on it, take a diddle stick, and you could tune it to any station you wanted. But it was just a one-stop station.
exactly.
And it had the volume control on the top that you just turn it on, and that was it. I've got 3 or 4 of those. They're fun to play with. And they also made it in FM as well. And I have one of those too.
Yep, got both. So that's but they really were pretty cool. And apparently everybody liked the design forever because they were doing this, like you say, about 1959, 1960. I think that's when I saw one on a gas station somewhere. It was on the guy's desk, you know, and it was tuned into the radio station that he advertised on. So that's pretty cool.
But Chuck, you mentioned that the microphone that you got, the reproduction looked too new, too shiny. And it reminded me of when I was doing community theater. We wanted to make something metal look old. My friend came up with this idea of using just black spray paint from a great distance, and it would put little pieces of paint on there, made it look a little bit corroded. It worked quite well.
Yeah, I've thought about hitting it with dulling spray. I'm not sure I really want to do the. I understand what you're doing with the black paint, but boy, that's pretty permanent. You know, you better like it.
Yeah, you'd also have to take the microphone apart. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be spreading it on the element.
This reproduction doesn't have an element in it, but you can put one in it if you want to. And you can buy a cheap ribbon mic for $69 these days, made in China, and stick it inside. But you don't have to do that. You could even just put a dynamic mic in it or whatever you wanted to. Be great for a stage prop. We're just using it as a prop in a display at the museum, and it looks the part. So, and it didn't cost us $5,000.
Yeah, I've seen some interesting microphones that people made to simulate the sounds of the earliest electric and the later acoustic recordings, and people that are building guitars and so on. And then they want to build the microphone that went with it at that time. And they're using tin cans and piezo elements, and getting a really crude sound out of this thing.
I was watching TV one morning, and there was the morning show had a band on it, and the kid that was the lead singer of the band used a telephone handset as a microphone, a red one, and he said, "I love the way it sounds." And I'm going, okay, whatever,
Yeah, there's a guy in that group that uses the phone part, not the microphone part, because he didn't know how to couple the low impedance signal into his amplifier, so he used the high impedance end.
He was using the headphone part of it as a microphone, but it would work. I mean, it will. I'm not sure what kind of fidelity it had. It sounded pretty crappy on TV. I remember that.
Well, again, he was trying to make it sound like an old blues recording that's 100 years old.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well, a telephone microphone wouldn't work because you need to power that. It's a variable resistance deal, the carbon mic.
Those are
Or
carbon
back.
mics, but the headset is a dynamic, so you can use it as a microphone.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like turning a headphone around. I mean, it'll work if you got enough gain.
Yeah. I just can't imagine it sounded. It probably didn't sound very good.
Well, no, it didn't. But the kid said, I love the way it sounds when he was interviewed because they asked him, why are you using a telephone handset? It was a red one, like a Western Electric type. And he said, I just love the way it sounds. So, so much for taste.
An
Well,
extreme case of an audio fool.
Well, fella named Vince Giordano, who was the in charge of the music for Boardwalk Empire, as a matter of fact, he's a local guy here, and he told me one time that he has a huge collection of old microphones, and he tries to use a period correct microphone for because he specializes in the 1920s music, and he uses the old microphones to get that old microphone sound on the recordings, and he's pretty obsessive about it.
Well, that is apparently why working things like 77DXs and 44BXs and stuff sell for a lot of money, because it's the recording studio guys that have the all digital consoles and everything want these old microphones to warm up the sound.
Yeah. We had an auction here a couple of months ago, and there was a pair of, is it Neumann I saw some really vintage high-end microphones, and in a local auction where there's fixer-upper radios going for $10 every minute, these things kept going up and up. It ended up selling for $37,000 to some recording studio in Manhattan. So to each their own.
Yeah, well, if it says Neumann on it, it's going to be expensive. You can be sure of that.
Yeah.
I've noticed too, there's some sites that sell audiophile websites. They'll sell like really old capacitors for way more money than they're remotely worth. And mind you, these capacitors probably don't even work, but they're original. I can't believe that. That blows my mind.
Well, those are the same guys who buy the $10,000 IEC power cord and insist that it makes their stereo have a wider sound stage, or whatever that means.
Well, we got
We'll buy that stuff.
We got under that a few years ago. We had some leftover Bumblebee capacitors with what they're calling them now, the black ones with the stripes on them, color stripes.
Yeah, those are the ones I saw online too. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Notoriously leaky, and we were selling them knowing that they were leaky for $40 a piece, and that's what they wanted, because that was the sound that they could reproduce the sound, the leakage through the tone controls. So they literally had a use for these things, and we didn't have that many left because we'd thrown away most of the stuff years ago. So there some of the things that in audio are subjective, and they want to reproduce a particular sound. That's the only way to get it. It's like putting a resistor in parallel with a thing.
Yeah, I have to divulge some of my past. For years, I was in the live sound business. I did sound for rock and roll concerts, and I started out working for a company called Choco, and one of our big clients was Three Dog Night. And on one of the shows, the lead guitar player's amp blew up. It just stopped working. And he asked if I could take it back to the shop and fix it for him. And we carried their equipment around in our truck. Then we were going back to Dallas. So I took the thing back, and I found out that the filter cap had gone bad, and it was the main problem, but it had all kinds of leaky capacitors. I mean, everything was leaky inside this thing, and all the tubes were microphonic. And so I changed all the tubes. I got this thing so it was ruler flat. It was just wonderful. I thought it was going to be great. I brought it back to the next show on Friday, and he plugged it in, and he said, "Man, what did you do to my amplifier? I can't get my sound." And luckily I hadn't. He was serious. Luckily, I had not dumped the trash can, so I took it back to Dallas and in the shop and put his old crappy tubes in it. He just loved it after that. So, go figure.
Did you leave the capacitors?
The capacitors were so bad that it was putting like plus 50 volts on the grid of the tubes. So no, I didn't put them back in, but it was the microphonic tubes that apparently was the deal. He could get sustain out of it because it was feeding back in the cabinet. Because I mean, you could tap on them and it go bonk, bonk, bonk when through the speaker. It was great. You know, just any of them. They were all that way.
Hey, Chuck, you recognize this?
Yes, I do. That's a lot of money right there.
What an interesting history. It's the University of Tennessee bought this in 1964 for use on when they're filming the UT football team for some reason. They wanted this microphone. And of all the crazy things, I have all of the original paperwork for it, where it came from up in New York City. Geez, I can't think of names.
Gotham Audio, I'll bet.
What Gotham Audio?
Gotham
I'm
Audio.
thinking of Batman or something like that. You know,
It's close, yeah.
I've got all the original paper on it, and apparently they didn't get a warranty card with it. So this guy who bought it for the University of Tennessee typed out a paper and said, "Well, I hope this suffices for a warranty thing there." And it says, "We all love this. All of my other sections are jealous because we have this microphone." And anyway, it apparently went up for auction at one of their auction sales a long time ago. I was at one of the auction sales, and there was this movie projector, you know, with a xenon lamp in it. I ended up buying it for like $100 or something like that. This guy walks up to me and says, "You know, I wish I'd laid on that a little bit more. I was wanting that projector." He says, "Well, what would you sell it for?" And I said, "Well, I do a lot of trading. I like microphones." He says, "Well, I have some microphones." And he called me a little later that afternoon and says, "Well, I have 3 of them." And I said, "Well, what are they?" He says, "Well, I have one of something. It was some no name. The other was a Shure." And I said, "Okay." He says, "And I have a Newman." And I said, "A Newman?" I said, "Would you spell that for me, please?" He spelled it out, and I thought, "Ooh, I'll be right over." So anyway, I went over to his house. Not only did he have this, I've got the original box for it that it comes in. I've got the power supply. I had everything and all the paperwork, but I didn't have the cord for it, the Tuchel plugs that go on one of mic and one of that. But a friend of mine in the Netherlands, when he came to this country and visited another friend of mine, he brought me a power cord for it. Well, this one, it was sent off to the Warner Brothers up in Los Angeles. They had a microphone guy up there. A friend of mine who's got a small recording studio said, "If you let me borrow it, I'll have it refurbished." And he sent it off to out to California. But anyway, I said, "Oh," and he pulled this thing out of the box, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'm interested in that." And he looked at me in the square in the eyes. He says, "Now you're going to think I'm going to rob you." And I said, "Well," I said, "everybody else has. Lay it on me." He said, "I want $75 and that projector for that microphone." And I couldn't, I mean, I was about to jump out of my shoes right there. And I thought, I better not just do this too fast. And I said, "Okay, I think I'll take it." So there's my story, but it cost me $1,500 to get it refurbished. But we've played with it a few times there. And in fact, in Nashville, a guy borrowed it out there and did something there. But I just thought, it's something you just rarely ever see. But I've got all the original paperwork and its spec sheet and everything where it came from Gotham Audio. Now that's highly unusual, but how lucky can you get once in my life, But what a neat box there. It even says in the top, M249.
That's very cool.
And a little,
and you're way ahead. That was a great investment. Look at the inside. The
inside is velvet, red velvet. And they even put on it, says Neumann M249B microphone condenser type, serial number 177 and 50 ohm impedance. I think that's what it says. But anyway, it fits in there beautifully and all of that. But, what a neat piece. I like that.
I'm sure it fits perfectly. It's German, I mean, it would have to fit or else somebody would be severely whiplash or something.
Yeah, it's even got like a little jewelry box and the latches on it and stuff like that and everything. But to find one intact, and not only just find one intact, but the paperwork with it, everything, all of this stuff in there, where he bought it, I think October of '64, and they use it to film football football.
What a waste.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, I'm glad they did. And then apparently they didn't keep it that long. They surplused it, and I got it. But he says, "Now you think I'm going to rob you?" Oh boy, yeah, he robbed me, all right.
Yeah, he really did. Yeah, well, they would have been better off with their football with an Electro Voice 635A that cost $69 retail back then. That would have been a much better choice for their football
Well,
stuff. But
apparently it wasn't his money he was spending, but anyway,
colleges are like that.
just one of those things in life. You once in a while you hit a sweet one.
You mentioned the precision fit to the case in the early 90s when Zenith got their custom made progressive scan high definition camera from BTS. It came in a custom fit case. And the first thing we had to do when we got it was catch our breath and buy a real US shipping case for their case to go into, because it was precision, but it was a miracle that it survived the US shipping monkeys. It was just not built enough like a tank to take the idiots who would throw it off a truck in the US.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what they can do to stuff. That's interesting. We have a Zenith BTS camera at the Texas Broadcast Museum, along with the CCU and everything. We haven't bothered to fire it up, but I understand they spent a bunch of money on that thing. And I'm pretty sure I saw it at an NAB show back in the 90s sometime.
Yeah, that custom camera cost $800,000.
Wow, I'd heard 400,000, but I'm sure it was crazy numbers. Yeah,
yeah, and it was retubed once at a cost of 85 grand, and the Satacons were Sony's, but Sony would not sell their low noise preamps. So BTS bought the tubes from Sony, and Sony would unsolder the preamps and solder on the higher noise preamps before they would ship them to BTS.
that sounds like Sony. I feel much better today because I had somebody send me an email. Well, actually, it was on Facebook, a message. Somebody said that they wanted to know what kind of duplex Edison outlet they should buy, because they had hospital grade ones now on their hi-fi system, and he wants to buy a better outlet to put on in the wall socket as a wall socket in his living room, and he has a $600 budget for that. I think you buy out Home Depot for $600.
Should have told him you had one.
Well, I've got a nice orange one sitting on my bench over here. I was going to use for something. Maybe I should try and sell it to the guy. Say, now this is what you need. It's real audiophile grade. It was made by Aztec virgins or something. Only under a full moon.
Once again, fools and their money are soon parted.
They sure are.
And with real gold contacts inside.
Wow, that's going to really help with the 400 feet of 14.2 Romex wire that's running around your house going to the circuit breaker box.
But Chuck, do you have the documentation of how it's been broken in?
Yeah, yes, that's it. It must be broken in for at least 400 hours before it gets. I've decided all that broken in stuff is just you got used to the way it sounded in 400 hours.
You break it
Hey,
in
Chuck.
after you cryogenically treat it too.
Well, we could do that too. I actually for $600, I will take one of these hospital grade orange outlets, and I will go freeze it overnight in my freezer and send it back to the guy. See if maybe that sounds good. I don't know.
Hey, Chuck, something I'd never noticed before. I just looked at the bottom of this case that this Neumann mic goes in. There's original sticker on it from Gotham Audio.
That's cool. They were the exclusive distributor for Neumann for years and years, and that's where you had to send them to get fixed too. They were it. Sennheiser bought them out eventually, but the funny thing is that when Germany fell, after World War II, the Russians got a hold of some of the stuff, and actually there's an East German version of the Neumann microphone, but the Russians not only made their own microphones using the similar cartridges, but they shared it with their buddies in China. And their buddies in China make copies of this too with a very similar looking cartridge. And actually some of them were quite good. But one year at a trade show, the Chinese actually showed up, and I think it was either Beijing 746 Audio or Sound King, I forgot which, but you could buy the cartridges that look just like the Neumann cartridge for $1 a piece if you bought $1,000 worth of them. So okay, there you go.
My friend in the Netherlands, when he brought me that cable for this mic, he also got me a microphone. There was one he said they only made 50 of them. It's a Neumann, but it's made in a different factory. And when you see Hitler up there ranting and raving, I have one of these Hitler's microphones. And when you open this one up and look at the tube in it, it's got the swastika. It's got the what do they call that symbol? The swastika, but there's another name for it. But anyway, it's got that on the tube on it that it was made for. That Hitler ordered some of those. I've got one of those as well. But it's just kind of neat that it even says, well, what's left of the sticker on it says made in Germany. And that one, it says it made exclusively represented and serviced by Gotham Audio Corporation.
I'm surprised it doesn't say made in West Germany back then, but maybe not. Maybe.
Yeah, that's right. They would have. It does say West. It's just there's a little piece of it left there, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but I don't know if you can see it. But anyway, I don't know if
you can actually, yeah.
But anyway, I see where it says West made. All I can make out is I know it says made in Germany, and at the bottom it says West and all of that. But it 1964, and
that's quite a collectible piece. Even the cable's hard to come by these days.
Very. And I also got the spider that holds it. Like I said, I got everything except the cable. And then I can't pronounce his name. It's some long Netherlands name there or something like that. But I need to see him again. But he said with COVID and all that, they wouldn't let him out of the country or something like that. Couldn't come over. But I'm hoping I get to see him soon because he always brings something neat from over there. He's got a recording studio over there. Got a weird name to it, and he calls it like the moving barn something. The moving barn recording, or I don't know. I have to look at that again though, but he can come up with some neat stuff.
There's probably a lot of that stuff floating around in Europe that we don't know about here. I know I used to tour in Europe with a few entertainers, and you come across stuff that you just never had seen in the US. So there's probably a lot of it in people's garages and things. Be fun to look at it. Folks, I got to go. And we've got way away from television into old microphones, So there you go. But this has been fascinating, actually.
Yeah, next to colored television, I love my microphones. Even when I was little in the second grade, I'd put on little plays in the second grade class. And for a microphone, I called it broadcasting. Remember those old Christmas tree light sockets the ones that were series that if you unscrew the bulb, they all go out. Well, it had these little Bakelite like sockets, and they looked like that. Like I was trying to reproduce a 77 DX, I guess, but I had this little thing trimmed up like this is a microphone, and I just love this stuff, you know. And
Yeah.
of course, it's like 60 some years ago.
Fortunately, I've had a fascination with microphones even more than TV cameras, but both are pretty bad. But I have seen your microphone collection, and I think you hands down win because you got some great stuff in there.
You need to come up here. I've even added to it since the last time you were here. He found it's like a crystal microphone. I've never seen a microphone that looked like a ruler. You know, it's about 12 inches long. It's in a rectangular ring mount, you know, like the carbon mics were. Really unusual. And that came from over there somewhere. But it's a carbon mic. And he brought me a French movie make. It's a Riven microphone, but it looks like a magnetron more than anything. But you need to come by next time you come up this way.
I will try to make a point of it because you do have quite the collection, to say the least.
Well, you're more than welcome anytime, or anybody else that comes through Knoxville. You know, just give me a call. Be happy to have you. If you can get through my warehouse, I have pathways through it.
Well, yes, I do remember that too. So
you were there before. That was in my old building that was destroyed there. But this new one, I'm amazed at how I filled it up inside of 2 years. And but anyway, I just collect everything. I find it and look for it. But your guys are welcome anytime. Good to see you and hear from you, Chuck.
okay, well, you guys take care. I'm going to have to run. My wife is making noises that she wants to eat dinner. It's only almost 9 o'clock now, so I guess she's right. Everybody have a great weekend or great week. We'll see you later.
Happy Thanksgiving.
That too.
Hey, Dave.
B,
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you.
Okay. I was just thinking earlier, I was talking about that TK41 camera that I've got that came from Como Television up there. And I remember when I was like 11, 12 years old, this camera was used at the World's Fair up there, a little booth, and Channel 5 did the same thing. See yourself on color TV on a round tube color set. And when I was 12 years old, I thought, I'd love to have one of those cameras, but to me back then it was just unobtainium, and it's just something how that one just popped up that Chuck Ferris happened to get it. That apparently someone that worked at the Lincoln Mercury dealership up there in Seattle, they got a camera, I guess when Como was throwing them out or whatever, they rescued it, and things sat in a dealer's showroom there for many, many years. And apparently they got new management up there and they decided, get rid of this thing. It's, not auto related. And they contacted Chuck Ferris and he ended up with it. I didn't even know that he had it. And I said, oh my gosh, I've got to have that camera. I have to have it because I was there in 1962, watching it, work at the World's Fair because they only had 2 TK41s back then. And as I stated before, up there at the transmitter site, they'd just let me in there and let me make voltage measurements and stuff. And they had a food show that would come on about 4 o'clock every afternoon. That's when I'd get off from school. I'd walk by there and I'd play with that TM10 monitor, their color. So, I've always loved color television and microphones.
I guess a lot of us have been playing around with this stuff since we were kids.
When I lived in Arlington, Virginia, I was walking distance from the Arlington incinerator. And I could walk down there. And if I wasn't there every day, I'd go every other day. And they had a fenced in area where people dump old refrigerators and etc. And I'd look through it, look for old radios, and I'd find them occasionally in there, and I'd bring them home, learn how to take them apart and put them back together again. And gosh, I was like 8 years old back then doing that. And imagine they let me in the incinerator. Had a old guy there in the place where the way the truck's coming in there. He just let me in there, and they'd never do that today. And same thing with transmitter sites. They wouldn't let a 10, 11-year-old kid, hang out in the transmitter and stuff, unless you found something exceptional. And I noticed on Facebook, someone made a reference to Norman Alquist that built his own television camera. And I remember that when he did that, he was 4 years older than myself. And he picked out all the circuits and all of the TM manuals that he liked best and built an Image Orthicon camera. And he won the science fair project up there. He got first place, and it became national. In the national, they sent him to New York and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that camera actually worked just as good as a TK11. And some years later, of all the crazy things, I've got that camera now. I sold a ship's binnacle on Craigslist there one time. The guy up in Washington State was interested in things like that. And we got to talking, and he knew people that I knew up there, back Radar Electric Company and such. And of all the other crazy coincidences, he has a sister that lives here in Knoxville. And at one point, he had to move some furniture down here for his sister. And I said, by the way, what are you driving? And I told him if he rents a van or something like that, something larger, I told him I'd pay for his gasoline both ways. And he stopped at Norman's house up there, and Norman gave me a ton of stuff. He even got a 21 CT55 out of the deal there that they used as a monitor in the waiting room up there, and it stamped Como on the back of it and stuff. So, my childhood dreams finally came true.
Julian, when I was in high school, I built a black and white television camera, and for some reason, it just I don't know. I guess I lost interest in it. A few years later, I sold it at the Englishtown flea market, and I guess every once in a while, tonight being one of those once in a whiles, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool if that turned up again somewhere? Somebody had it stashed in there.
What year did you sell it? Because I used to. I was at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and I'd visit Englishtown every Saturday, look for stuff.
It would have been around 74, give or take, 75.
I may have come across it up there.
Yeah, it was that one they used to sell the plans in the back of Popular Electronics. I scanned the magazine, the plans, and I put it on the Internet Archive. I still had the booklet that I built it from, but sadly, there was a funny story behind that too, because a friend of mine, the guy who got me into ham radio and was in the radio club in the high school, he somehow found out that CBS Television in New York City had a preventative maintenance program, and they would pull the Vidicons on some of their cameras after a certain number of hours. And if you wrote them a letter, all nicey, politey, and engineery sort of, and said, "Hey, I'm a kid, and I would love to get a hold of a Vidicon," they would send you one. And that was just the most unbelievable thing in the world, that you could get an unobtainium camera tube for free from CBS. And then you had to shell out the bucks, of course, for the scanning coils and everything else. And but to get a Vidicon camera tube when you're in high school in 1969, that was pretty heady stuff.
You and I have a lot in common. When I got my driver's license and was 16 years old, I drove up to Channel 10 here in Knoxville, and this would have been 1967. They gave me a half a dozen Image Orthicon tubes that they have, and I still have them today. I bet I've got in all my collection, Ellerby sold me what was left of his stuff, Iconoscope stuff. I bet I've got about 50 Image Orthicons.
Well, I have to go. Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Yeah, good seeing you, Wayne. So long, everybody. All right, I'll shut the meeting down, and unless anybody desperately wants to stay on, and we'll see you guys next month.
Hey, what part of New Jersey do you live in?
I've been all over. Right now, I moved a couple of years ago. I'm in very, very western New Jersey. If I go a couple hundred yards further west, I get wet in the Delaware River. I'm over by Easton, Pennsylvania, just on the New Jersey side.
Okay.
Yeah. So got out of the big city life, and we're out here by the cornfields now.
I used to drive all over New Jersey one time looking for everything. You drive down, you know where Rumson is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Rumson makes a slum, it makes any other wealthy area look like a slum.
Yeah, we didn't plan on moving there.
Yeah, it's a high rent district. Well, anyway, I used to drive down Rumson Road going out to Seabright there, and you'd be surprised what those people threw away. And when I'd find TV sets, I'd pick them up and I'd bring them back to the fort, and I'd fix them in my room up there, and I'd put a note on the bulletin board. I always sold TVs there in the early 70s, or take them to Englishtown auction. That was a lot of fun.
The pickings were pretty good in northern New Jersey many years ago. You had the old cities, you had your West Orange and Newark and whatnot, where people would have invested in that technology years ago. And the best advice I ever got was you go to the richer places, because rich people sell stuff to get rid of it, and poor people sell stuff to make money. So you go to the wealthy neighborhoods, and those were the people that invested in the TVs back in the 40s and 50s, and the pickings were pretty good. We're still tripping over stuff out here. It's just amazing.
Yeah, you're in a place for that. Yeah. Driving down Rumson Road, they'd even throw away nice Oriental rugs. I mean, real rugs.
Yeah.
And I used to have, in fact, I think I still have one or two of them. But then you just find all kinds of stuff sitting out there on the road.
Yep. No, I found, I don't know what, probably close to half a dozen unobtainium TV sets and estate sales and whatnot over the years. Yeah, most of them are out at the museum now. But this stuff just, it's still turning up occasionally.
Did you ever go up to Van Dyke stuff up there? I didn't realize he had passed away until a long time after that. And
no.
He had a lot of stuff up there, mostly microphone and audio stuff, but I did buy a TK-41 from him there with a property tag on it that it belonged to NASA. That could have been one of those 4 cameras they had for doing weather reports for the aircraft. Gosh, I've got like 3 TK-41s and a TK-40. I've got Ed Rattan's camera there, but I just had to have them. I just love that stuff.
You need all them warehouses.
Dave, I was going to ask you a question. You said the plans in the back of Popular Electronics. I was wondering if it was Mel Shadbolt at ATV Research, or perhaps Don.
Yeah, if you're looking at the Internet Archive, that's the one that I scanned and put up there. Yeah.
He's, Mel is still going as far as I know out in
Nebraska.
Really? Yeah. He's in about 80s or 90s now.
Wow. Gee, look him up and tell him to come on the meeting next month. We'd love to talk to
him. he would like it. Yeah, he would like it.
Wow. Yeah, that was a life-changing experience for me. That was a cool situation to run across that, and then to be able to actually make it happen.
Yeah, and he made all the parts, the coils and all that stuff. I guess he was a television engineer out there, and before he started into this. And I tried to transistorize his televerter kit. Never got all the way through it, but I did get some crazy lines and stuff on the TV, so I knew I was partway there. But yeah, he was an amazing guy, and is too. And I think he's running. He doesn't make the kits anymore, but he sells like security video stuff now. And I think he has a family, and he better have somebody in there to run the business along with him, because he's got to be, as they say, he's got to be almost in his 90s now. Well, that's interesting.
I got something today at a junk sale. It's a television field strength meter. We'd hook up your antenna wires, and there's a tuner knob on it, and a big meter made by Approved Electronics Instrument Corp. And it's kind of cool. You know, I wish I had a video camera. I'd show you a picture of it, but maybe I can show it at the next meeting. Get some video hooked up on my computer here.
Yeah, I got one of them too, and that's another one of those. What the hell am I going to do with that now?
Nothing. I mean, what would we use it for? It's just a piece of history, you know.
I put it on the shelf next to my UHF converter. Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, Dave, do you ever? Geez, I can't think of his name offhand. He used to rent TVs and put.
No, I haven't seen Harry Poster in
Harry Poster.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen him in 10, 20 years.
What's happened to him? He went to like photographic type cameras and all of that, and he just kind of did. He used to advertise an antique radio all the time, and have the back cover and
Yeah,
all
you
of that.
used to see him around occasionally. I went to his place one time. I went. He had a storage unit in Hackensack. He had all his, it was full of 7-inch TVs and whatnot. And I remember being very impressed that his published number was a cell phone. And I had never heard of anyone actually publishing a cell phone number, because they were so ungodly expensive to use back in 1986 or whenever it was we got the cell phones here.
Yeah, he had an email address when that was beginning to get popular and all that. I thought, wow, and he used to ever see stuff on eBay and stuff in the beginnings and all of that. But yeah, he just kind of disappeared, and he wrote a book on early television, a value book. Never heard from him. Nobody else knows where he's at.
Like I say, he used to show up occasionally around here. We'd see him occasionally, but yeah, it's got to be 10, probably 20 years now. I think he's still in business, but he's mostly renting 24 frame per second conversion televisions to the film industry, or at least that's what he was doing the last time I heard about him.
Yeah, he adapted to a lot of things there though, but yeah, I just hope he's doing okay. And his brother that collects cattle and radios, and you don't see him anymore either. But anyway, I guess that's life.
All right, I got to roll up the sidewalks here, so I'm gonna close up here, and we'll see everybody. All right, so good night.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.